Ralf Friedrichs is an American addiction recovery coach, life coach, pastor, author, and motivational speaker. After recovering from his own struggles with alcoholism, he became an ordained minister and dedicated his career to helping others. Key aspects of his work and background include addiction recovery and life coaching. Friedrichs is a certified coach who uses his personal history and spiritual guidance to help individuals overcome addiction and improve their lives. He is the author of the book Bottoms Up, Surrendering to God, Not to Booze, and 7 other books. Ministry. He holds several degrees, including a doctorate of theology and master of divinity. As a pastor, he integrates faith and spirituality into his coaching. Media presence. Friedrichs hosts the syndicated Take Your Life Back Today show, podcast, and YouTube channel, where he offers daily inspiration. He has also been featured in magazines and on television. Presidential Volunteer Service Award. In 2020, he was a recipient of the Presidential Volunteer Service Award presented by Donald J. Trump. The turning point. Failed attempts at sobriety. Friedrichs had tried to stop drinking many times before, often due to the consequences of his actions. He told himself he could still drink, but would be more careful, an idea he now recognizes as part of his denial. Rejection of AA. After his epiphany, he briefly attended Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, meetings. However, he felt the format, where people mainly talked about their day, was not enough to support heavy drinkers and was not an effective rehab for him. The decision to surrender. Facing the very real possibility of death and losing his family, Friedrichs made a choice to fully surrender to God. He realized there was no longer a contest between his drinking and his faith. Life in recovery. Daily commitment. Recovery for Friedrichs is an ongoing commitment. He finds that being a life coach, pastor, and motivational speaker keeps him accountable by having others rely on him for guidance. Embracing a new purpose. Since 2013, Friedrichs has dedicated his life to helping others overcome addiction. He became an ordained minister and has authored multiple books, sharing his story to give others hope. Faith-based recovery. His recovery is anchored in his faith. He believes that surrendering to God is the key to managing life and addiction and has enabled his personal transformation. Elaborate on the epiphany Ralf Friedrichs experienced in the doghouse. After years of escalating alcoholism, Ralf Friedrichs experienced his defining moment in June 2013. His wife, having reached her breaking point, locked him out of their house after a drinking binge, forcing him to take refuge in the doghouse. What he describes as an epiphany from God during this humbling experience was the catalyst for his ultimate surrender and recovery. A wake-up call. After downing 10 vodka shots in a single sitting, Friedrichs was refused entry into his home by his wife. For a day and a half, he was forced to stay in the doghouse, a place of shame that mirrored the state of his life. Divine intervention. While in the doghouse, Friedrichs felt a profound spiritual experience, an overwhelming realization that he was about to lose everything, including his life, if he did not change. For the first time, he felt he had to fully surrender to a higher power, rather than just try to moderate his drinking. Surrendering. This experience forced him to a turning point. He chose to surrender to God and commit to sobriety, rather than continue his cycle of self-destruction and attempts to manage his consumption. After years of escalating alcoholism, Ralf Friedrichs experienced his defining moment in June 2013. His wife, having reached her breaking point, locked him out of their house after a drinking binge, forcing him to take refuge in the doghouse. What he describes as an epiphany from God during this humbling experience was the catalyst for his ultimate surrender and recovery. The event and its impact. Divine intervention. While in the doghouse, Friedrichs felt a profound spiritual experience, an overwhelming realization that he was about to lose everything, including his life, if he did not change. For the first time, he felt he had to fully surrender to a higher power, rather than just try to moderate his drinking. the choice to surrender. This experience forced him to a turning point. He chose to surrender to God and commit to sobriety, rather than continue his cycle of self-destruction and attempts to manage his consumption. Intervention. Friedrichs attributes this moment directly to God, seeing it as the spiritual intervention that finally broke his cycle of denial. For years, he had been trying to control his drinking, but in the doghouse, he realized he needed to surrender. Humiliation and humility. The act of being locked out of his own home and relegated to the doghouse was a profound humiliation that stripped away his ego. It forced him to a place of humility where he could finally accept his powerlessness over alcohol. Ultimately, this experience was not about a specific thought or line of reasoning, but a complete sensory and spiritual download that made his situation undeniable. This shift from trying to control his life to surrendering it to God became the foundation for his recovery. Elaborate on the wordless aspect of his intervention circumvented his rational mind and exposed the raw, destructive truth of his situation. He could not argue with or deny what he felt. A profound sense of grace and surrender. The wordless message was a feeling of an ultimatum, surrender or die, but it was delivered in a way that offered grace rather than condemnation. This led him to the realization that he no longer had to fight to control his life, but could finally surrender to God. The universal language of spiritual truth. In many faiths, the most profound spiritual truths are not conveyed through language, but through direct spiritual experience. For Friedrichs, the doghouse became the location for such a direct, unmistakable, and universal communication. In short, the wordless aspect of divine intervention emphasizes that his decision to change was not an intellectual one, but a spiritual one, born out of a deep and undeniable encounter with God's presence and will. In closing, has Friedrichs described this experience in other terms? This is a point at which a person's life has become so unmanageable that they are finally ready to seek help and accept change. Friedrichs' rock bottom was literally and figuratively in the doghouse. A spiritual slap. In interviews, Friedrichs has described the event as a spiritual slap from God, indicating a forceful, jarring, and unmistakable intervention that broke through his years of denial and defiance. The last contest. He has framed the experience as the final showdown between his alcoholism and his spiritual path. In that moment, he recognized that the contest was no contest anymore, and he fully surrendered.